Well, first of all, I must thank UNESCO because I borrowed the room here from the water unit. And so they are hosting me. The other thing is I thank you, Iwa, for inviting me and you all for being here. I'm a civil engineer with a kind of PhD in system analysis applied to water resources and another PhD in fluvial geomorphology. This is a non-conventional presentation, certainly, discourse. We can imagine our future territory as a collection of, let's say, natural islands with some connectors. And the most natural connectors certainly are rivers. So this is a very good reason to be with them. But I think you will agree with me that another basic fundamental reason is that we love them because they are beautiful. Sorry, this is next. Okay. Let me see if it works. Yes, there are beautiful rivers around the world. This is Italy. This is Spain. This is New Zealand. This is me. And this is Chile. All this is just one river with all its diversity. This is Colombia, magic Colombia, as you can see. Well, when we touch that, the point, we are thinking of this part of the total economic value, which is a direct, non-consumptive use because of recreation, aesthetic appreciation, and so on. And certainly there are several other values associated with ecosystem services, but the actual value associated with the river by itself is the non-use value, which includes these components: existence value. You want to protect it even if you will never see it or use it, and the altruistic value, bequest value for future generations. So certainly we think of a lot of components that will make part of this value. And the Water Framework Directive has somehow schematized this view in these three main components that you know very well. So we are able now to set up a river restoration strategy or conservation strategy. We assess the value of the system now, and we set where we want to go tomorrow. With that, we do a zonization and prioritization of zones. So the one is a zone in very high status that we want to preserve. These are very bad status zones that we have to recover somehow. And all the others, which are the majority, can be improved somehow with a kind of a set of actions at different spatial scales. And then we have implementation tools to make this possible. Unfortunately, this is not the only objective, the fluvial ecosystems in good status. We have many others. For instance, if we establish longitudinal continuity, probably we will lose something in hydroelectric production. And this is ground for confidence, because restoration needs space, and space is taken from other activities. And with climate change, you know, many are proposing dams as a tool to produce green energy or to ensure water supply. And this doesn't go with the restoration of the water regime. We still are not able to merge successfully these two clouds: the tools, the technical knowledge, and the social psychological dimension, which is extremely important. This is the typical, ideal, rational decision process, where you acknowledge you have a problem, you identify problems and opportunities, you specify a vision and objectives, identify action lines, options within them, and conform a strategy. Then within this strategy, you define a number of alternatives, you evaluate them, and this implies an exercise of prediction. and the choice of an evaluation framework. And then you go into a more or less formal negotiation phases where actually decisions are made. Then you specify the plan of the project and you define a monitoring plan. And all this is ideally performed through a participatory process. Well, I have never seen a process like this implemented in full. And one of the reasons is that there is a weakness in this evaluation step. A lot of words, a little content. Take a case in which you have two objectives only, water supply and flood protection. I hope you'll soon see it, if Zoom permits it. If I can measure these objectives, I can find out, for instance, that my utopia point, which is the point where I should be willing to go, which is the combination of the maximum value of each single objective independently, is here. So I cannot even think of going somewhere else with the further water supply safety or flood safety. Sorry. And I can also see where is the historical performance of the system. I discovered that I cannot do better than this level of flood safety or this level of water supply. I can only move at best on this Pareto frontier. So this is a very valuable piece of information. And another objective here, for instance, is to avoid disturbance to people. So I want to aggregate different towns, let's say, the same for risk, I aggregate different zones. Well, this aggregation process is always difficult, but we have a tool for that, the multi-attribute value function, which comes from the multi-attribute decision theory. It's almost never applied, but extremely powerful. Now that we've discovered that we have multiple objectives, we need to measure the nature value of rivers to compete with the others. So at least conceptually, we should widen our assessment scheme, which is this one, coming from the Water Framework Directive, which basically measures the health of riverine ecosystems or their ecological integrity, which is how well they are. We should add peculiarity, which says how special it is. You may imagine a stretch which is not particularly healthy, but it is the last place where a migratory bird species can stop to recover energy before crossing the ocean, let's say. So that's very important. And this is part of the nature value of that river, including that stretch. But I want to focus now on the hydromorphological component. The geomorphic component is extremely important when we deal with rivers. Actually, this is why I took a second PhD in geomorphology. You see here an aggrading river in southern Italy, in this case. These are meters. It was here until a few decades ago. If you don't deal with this type of behaviors, you cannot talk about nature conservation at all. Well, here we have a strange issue with the Water Framework Directive, because its conception is to put biota at the center. And the HIMO component is just coming into play when you have a high status biotic component. Otherwise, for all the other status, it doesn't come into play. And this provokes a number of problems. For instance, you have a situation here that may be not high level, just good. You build a road here. Certainly from the morphological point of view, it has worsened because it is narrower, it cannot move any longer and so on. But this is invisible because you have not the obligation to consider the geomorphic status. And your indicators for the biotic component may be myopic, don't see the effects. So this is a problem because it opens the door to a worsening of the status. It's true also the reverse way, that we have a problem when we try to improve it and in particular, dealing with longitudinal continuity, I want to improve this this component, which is here in the HIMO component, to basically improve the biota component and in particular the fish fauna. But unfortunately, I may fail because the relationships are much more complicated. For instance, there is fishing affecting the fish fauna. There is restocking, there are exogenous species, and even my action on longitudinal continuity, thank you, which improves HIMO, may worsen exogenous species because they are spreading. So I may fail. Well, in conclusion, to deal with this biota-centric evaluation scheme, I need to consider HIMO also for status less than high status, and recognize that each component deserves a role per se in the overall scoring. So not this, but this. It's more equitable, let's say. And now we come to the second problem. Oh, so I know how to make it disappear. If the inappropriate mathematical structure assumed by the water-thermal rate, which is the one out or out criterion, or the worst wins. So here we have three components. The worst one is, in this case, the biological one. Its score is 5, the worst class. And even if we improve the chemical component to the best, it remains like that. Or if the other one worsens, the worst. So you can immediately recognize that these situations are not indifferent to us. And this means that the index is wrong. A simple weighted average is much more sensitive. And here again, the value function tool can help us, which is a little bit more refined than the weighted average. Well, why this emphasis on the evaluation scheme, which is already operating in Europe? Well, eventually you must justify your action with measurable indices. So if they are wrong, your actions will be badly judged. And inappropriate assessment implies bad actions. HIMO, or better said, geomorphological comprehension, river character and behavior, can illuminate on what has to be done now or on what may happen tomorrow. And the HIMO is the first component affected by a number of projects. And now I come to the hydromorphological risk, flooding and morphological effects. So we have posed since a long time the engineering paradigm to face this problem, which goes with this motto: achieve safety through hydraulic works. And the result is this: very narrow channels with a lot of defenses, and land uses occupying the whole territory that was previously of the river, including settlement. And in spite of that, we have high risk and high management costs of these works and low ecological value. This is not what we want. And it has a number of other effects. Anytime you build a work, you have to maintain it forever. So the newborn children will already have a burden of expenses from the beginning, forever. Is this going accordingly to sustainability? In this basin, you have natural flooded areas. Then you build levees, no more flooding, but you are exporting downstream a much higher flood peak. This is a negative externality, literally. Then there is the issue of fault safety. You have a town here flooded with event A, so we build a dam or a dike. Event A is contained here, but thanks to this new safety, we build more. Unfortunately, a higher event B is always possible. And that's the risk, is the combination of the probability times the potential damage. The probability of this is lower, but the potential damage is much higher. And the risk has increased. And this occurs every year, every day. And when we refer to a reference event, as usual, let's say the flow peak associated with a return period of 200 years, we are automatically considering only the probability as up to it, which is this white area. And we are neglecting the gray area that may be small, but not negligible at all. I mean, also, works may fail, do collapse sometimes. So we may have nullified the risk associated with the design event as the engineering paradigm wants. But when we consider the full spectrum of events, we have a non-zero risk. And when we consider the possibility of failure of the works, we have a risk which may be by far greater than zero. This is the residual risk that up to now has never been considered in engineering design. You may still think, in spite of all this, that to face climate change, it's sufficient to increase the magnitude of flow rate associated with different return periods, and then proceed with the usual approach, achieve safety through gray measures. But this is wrong, because we have a number of factors together. We have sea level rise, which affects also river behavior and flooding. We will see morphological modification of rivers because of a different water regime, because of a different sediment supply from the mountains, because of the glaciers melting and so on, and because of a different behavior of vegetation, riparian vegetation, which is extremely important in hydromorphological behavior. So we will see new, much more extended phenomena, like tropical cyclones in Italy, never seen before. And we would leave an unacceptable legacy to our heirs. So we have to change. We have to switch from this situation to this situation where we created a fluvial corridor. So much more space to the river. It's able to deliver its own river style with a geomorphic dynamics. We retreated the uses or compatibilized them with this dynamics. But this is not enough, because it is naive to hope that water will remain inside the channel. It simply will not. And residual risk in urban areas is very high. Here we can try to do things in terms of waterproofing. This is an example. The entrance of the subway in Milano, in the station, has been rising so that during the flood, water at least doesn't enter the metro, which is very important. But this is not enough. We have to do more. We have to move towards hydrocities, because sooner or later, water will come into the city. So this is the idea of hydrocities. If we don't have space to adapt our cities, we have to build new cities on the waters, but without interfering with them. And according to the socioeconomic context, for instance, in developing countries, this is tilt houses, a good solution. Well, my key message is then, let's start from love, with no shame, because this is a very strong motivation for all what we do concerning nature and ecosystem. We shouldn't hide it. We should solve the weaknesses of the ecosystem assessment water framework directive scheme, the role of HIMO, the one out, all out criterion, and merge peculiarity to have the full measure of the value of nature. Understand the geomorphic behavior of rivers at the basis of any action. Recognize the multi-objective nature of decision problems. Merge, much more than now, scientific and participatory components. And measure the key objectives: costs, total risk, the value of nature, by using the value function tool. And adopt a really integrated view of actions, looking at these different objectives or topics at the same time. I see that now the nature directive or law will will push for a new plan, which is understandable. But I then will see the authorities, the institutions working in parallel with different plans, trying to satisfy different directives and not communicating among them. Until we don't see the different objectives on the same table evaluated so that we can see really the trade-off among them, we will not progress so much. Well, concerning risk, we have to abandon the safety chimera and foster a cultural revolution from engineering to an NDS paradigm, exploring integrated alternatives of fluvial corridor, land use, and hydro cities, and bravely consider possible future hydrology. Choose solutions which be robust and flexible. With the no-regret criterion is a very good candidate, as we cannot use the expected value criterion, as we are not able to determine probabilities for the future. We can do projections, but without probabilities. And start now, because planning and implementation need a lot of time. Well, this then is the link between your topic, the nature conservation, and risk. Because although risk management is traditionally one of the worst enemies of a good ecological status, climate change obliges us to switch to a new nature-based paradigm and hence undertake serious large-scale restoration actions. And here, as you can see, the emphasis is not on longitudinal continuity, which is very welcome, of course, but it is more on lateral continuity, space, and the ability to recover a geomorphic dynamics. So there is material if you are interested. Thank you very much.